For many years, cultural life has been a central aspect of Evansville society. People throng to the hub of the city, downtown Evansville, which buzzed with activity. Horse-drawn carriages, electric streetcars, early automobiles, and pedestrians flooded the streets. At the time, downtown Evansville offered more than a dozen theaters, the largest ones being the Grand and the Majestic. In an era before television and multi-screen megatheaters, the large downtown theaters could easily draw 2,000 patrons on a normal day. At its height, these theaters held up to 14,000 customers combined. Vaudeville, the art of performing impromptu skits and comedy acts, and new movies were the rave. Evansville citizens rushed to watch the latest performances. According to an article in the Evansville Courier and Press, two prominent entrepreneurs met on the seemingly insignificant corner of 6th and Main and struck up a conversation. That casual conversation between the two men, banker Marcus S. Sontag and theater magnate Frederick H. Grunberg Sr., would in 1921 lead to the development of the Victory Theater that still stands today. On Friday, August 13, 1921, the decision was made over who would be awarded the construction rights to the new theater and its adjoining hotel. That Saturday, Sontag announced that the $692,000 contract would be awarded to the M.J. Hoffman Construction Company. Hoffman stated that the Victory's preliminary work would commence on Monday, August 16. Hoffman also noted that the contract his company was given was the largest contract since the Evansville Courthouse was built. The Victory was a local collaboration, according to A.J. Hoffman. He promised that all laborers used to build the theater would be hired from Evansville. Construction will begin in September 1920. Besides the hundreds of Evansville locals who worked on the construction of the Grand Theater, many local businesses also contributed to the project. A major patron was the Evansville Supply Company on First Avenue and Pennsylvania Street. They supplied the pipe fillings, valves, radiation, and the asbestos covering for the plumbing and heating in the Victory Theater and the Hotel Sontag. Linsing Brothers furnished the Victory and Sontag with cement, metal lath, waterproofing, hydrated lime, Mochar color, molding plaster, and wall plaster. Gottman and Weber Company equipped the theater and the hotel with heating and ventilation. Also, the Victory would be one of the first buildings to implement a state-of-the-art water cooling system. Mr. Sontag and Mr. Grunberg Sr., along with the many citizens of Evansville who were involved in the construction of the building, were impressed by how many patrons and businesses wanted to be a part of the Hotel Sontag and the Victory Theater. 11 months after the unexpected meeting between Grunberg and Sontag, construction of the theater was complete. On July 16, 1921, the Grand Theater finally opened its doors to the public. Over 2,000 patrons from around the region and even Hollywood came to attend the grand opening of the Victory Theater, a mixture of vaudeville, comedy, and silent film. However, vaudeville was a dying art. By the 1920s, silent film dominated the industry. The Victory slowly transitioned from being a hybrid theater house into an exclusive silent movie palace. However, due to personal reasons, Grunberg was unable to keep the theater afloat. In 1926, the Loews Theater Company acquired the Victory Theater, renaming it as the Loews Victory. Strangely enough, it was at that time, the Great Depression, that the cinema industry reached its apex. Hollywood, which had moved to the West Coast, cranked out dozens of movies a year. The various theaters became silent movie palaces, with each one showing the movies produced by their respective Hollywood owners. During this era, the Loews chain held the rights to the MGM movie industry, which produced some of the greatest classics of the time. Prodigious movies such as Ben-Hur and The Wizard of Oz were performed exclusively at the Loews theaters, the biggest in Evansville being the Victory. At the time, movies were still considered a family event. Many times, viewers would come early in the afternoon, watch the movie that was playing at the time, wait for the features they originally planned to watch, and leave 3, 4, or 5 showings later. To accommodate this, theaters would offer double features, with printed programs that displayed the day's showings. At its height, downtown Evansville was so vibrant that it could barely accommodate the mixture of trolleys, streetcars, automobiles, and pedestrians that wanted to be a part of the movie culture. Unfortunately, this golden age did not last. In 1948, the Supreme Court made a landmark decision to break up the vertical trusts that Hollywood had prospered from for so long. Paramount, MGM, Fox, and 20th Century were now forced to compete with each other. In Evansville, this meant that company theaters, such as the Loews MGM Victory and Paramount Princess, were now competing with each other for customers. Combined with the rise of television and the expansion of the automobile in American culture, the theater industry took a large blow. Evansville citizens moved away from the center of the city and became thriftier, preferring the ease of the TV over the clutter of downtown. To try to stem the outflow of business, theaters such as the Victory tried to implement new technologies that would make motion pictures more enticing than television programs. Movies were given more color, surround sound, and widescreen projections. Regrettably, these new technologies could not be applied to the grand theater palaces that had once been intended to fill thousands of patrons in one showing. New movie entrepreneurs pioneering the drive-in movement and multi-screen theaters moved out of the downtown area to match the suburbia movement that occurred following the Second World War. These cinemas appeared in neighborhood suburbs next to the strip malls, department stores, and drive-in restaurants that had become the defining features of the period. For the Loews Victory, this was the end of its old prominence. As the downtown area dried up, so did its many theaters and businesses. One after the other, each of these enterprises shuttered, being converted into either apartment complexes or new parking lots. By the 1970s, only the old Loews Victory remained, but eventually, even Loews gave up on the last of Evansville's grand theaters. In 1971, the theater was sold to Paul Steeler and Joe Kaler. Kaler eventually became the sole owner of the theater and tried to save it by deciding to split the balcony into a multiplex. However, this idea flopped, proving again that the old theater houses could not be converted to fit the interests of the people. The Victory continued on in this fashion, but in 1979 the theater hit a new low. The building was converted into a nightclub and later a teenage club. The seats were torn down, the old organs removed, and the floor was flattened to accommodate a dance floor. During this period, the old theater became a casual outing for reckless teenagers. Even though all of these changes were employed, there seemed to be no good adaptive use for the theater in sight. Then, in 1991, the city decided it was time to save the downtown area. The idea to renovate the Victory Theater was brought up and cordially received by the people. Mayor Frank McDonald II jumped to approve the venture, citing the Evansville Philharmonic's need for a new venue and the possibility of a vibrant city performing arts center as central motivations behind the project. A board, co-chaired by Tom Tooley and Rita Eikamp, was established to organize the funding and oversee the renovation.
We had a committee of 14. We didn't have a penny to our name, so we hired no staff. We didn't have any money for staff. And the committee actually did all the work, from taking gifts and sending out bills to collect those gifts, those donations. We had about 400 people from the community, businesses and individuals who donated. We raised $2.5 million, which was what was required by the city for the project to go ahead. And everyone worked very hard, and it took probably 7 years because we stopped for a year while the other portion of the building was being, money was being raised for that.
With the collaborative efforts of local businesses, organizations, and philanthropists, over $2.5 million was raised to revitalize the Victory Theater.
I became involved because I'm active in the Philharmonic and found that we really were looking for a new space, more acoustically adaptive for the Philharmonic, and the music director of the symphony was Stuart Kershaw. He was very much interested in seeing this happen.
During the process, 1,900 new velvet seats were added. The floor, wallpaper, balcony, and ornate decorations were vividly restored, and a new wing of the building was added. By 1998, the doors were ready to open. The Victory Theater had been restored to its former glory. Over 1,200 patrons, the same number as the original opening, attended the reopening. which featured an act by the comedian Carrot Top. In a nostalgic fashion, programs were printed to mimic the same ones that had been produced in 1921. Today, the Victory Theater continues to be the cultural icon it was once built to be. As the permanent venue for the Evansville Philharmonic Orchestra, the Victory has transformed from its past grandeur as a silent movie palace to an accessible performing arts center. Unfortunately, some uncertainties remain. With the recent economic downturn, the Victory has once again struggled to maintain its prominence. Small arts acts, such as dance groups, vaudeville performances, and indie music bands, are unable to perform at the Victory due to high renting prices. Because of this, certain individuals in the community feel that the renovation did not fully achieve its purpose. Despite the fact that it had fallen out of greatness as a silent movie palace, the Victory Theater has survived to become an icon of Evansville culture.